It's time for me to ascend.
From the sewers of Gotham, a new villain emerges.
You didn't invite me, so I crashed!
From the rooftops of Gotham, the perfect enemy comes to life.
I am Catwoman. Hear me roar. Yeah.
And the only one who can save this city is a creature of the night.
Hey, stud. I thought we had something together.
We do.
While she craves a romance she can sink her claws into,
You're catnip to a girl like me.
he plots a foul reign of destruction.
My dear penguins, thanks to Batman, the time has come to punish all of Gotham!
You missed. Above Gotham looms its greatest hero.
We're back with another edition of 90s Night. Of course, I'm your host, Benner. I'm head penguin tonight. And of course, I'm joined, as always, but with Kells McNells, my partner in crime, who is, what's your, I mean, it's pretty on the nose, right?
Meow.
Meow.
That's all.
Yeah, I mean, listen, we decided, we took a little bit of a break here and we decided, hey, listen, let's come back. But it's the Christmas season. So hence, if the hats, if that didn't give anything away, we figured, hey, listen, why don't we do a Christmas special or Christmas episode of 90s Night? And we got to talking and we were like, hey, listen, you know, what episode should we do? What kind of film should we do? And we decided that we haven't actually had a lot of conversations about Batman Returns and whether or not Batman Returns is considered, what kind of film is actually considered, because I think it's considered less of a superhero movie and probably more of a horror flick. There's a lot of conversation out there saying that it might actually be a Christmas flick. And we're here to end that debate and get into it when we can. So quick spoiler warning. Of course, if you haven't seen Batman Returns, it was made and released in 1992. So you've had 30 plus years to watch this film. But again, if you're curious and you want to save something for Christmas Eve or Christmas Day for you and your family, and you don't want any spoilers, now's the time to duck out. But of course, if you don't care and you've seen this movie a million times like we have, please stick around. We're happy that you're here. And of course, hit that subscribe button, hit the bell, and subscribe to our YouTube channel. Of course, we're these 90s Nights episodes we're not sponsored, and we do put them on exclusively on our YouTube channel. So please go back in time, check out our YouTube channel. You can see all of the other previous episodes of 90s Night that are there. We've done 7 in the past. This is number 8. And of course, it's our Christmas special where we are going to review Batman Returns. Anyway, over to you, Kells. You always have a drink, of course, ready to go for the look at this. Look at this. Look at this background. Wow, that's crazy. How did you just
I have no idea. I didn't actually do anything. It just
really
went off.
Is it the spark? It must be the hat, right? It must be
the sparkly. I have no idea, but I'm sure I'll trigger it many times for this episode accidentally. But for today's special drink, I have what I am calling the Cat Scratch Fever in honor of Catwoman. It is a mix of cherry liqueur, cream puff liqueur, vanilla ice cream blended with a splash of milk to make it extra delicious. Which it is. So
taste test gets good.
It's good. It's good. I did it. Nailed it.
Oh, Okay, amazing. And listen, we always check out our Instagram. We always put these recipes online. So if you want to make one before the episode airs, of course, we record these about a week in advance. But check that out, and you can make yourself a tasty beverage for the holiday season or the Christmas season or whatever your jam is. Maybe you just want to have a big, tasty, sugary drink, right?
It's delicious, so I encourage that. We also have a very special surprise today. So we do have a special guest for this episode. Our very special guest who's joining us today is multi-Canadian Podcast Award winner, co-host of the Dr. DC podcast, as well as the Ghostfacers podcast. Very good friend of mine, former prom date, Mr. Reid Vanier. Hello, Mr. Reid Vanier. He keeps going back and forth. There we go.
Hey. Hey.
All right, welcome. My dog is celebrating too in the background. If you can hear that, my apologies.
Yeah, no, that's good. Thanks for having me.
Thank you for joining us, Reid. And I know that this film has a very special place in your heart.
Yeah. I mean, I watch it at least once a year. I've seen it a million times. It's my favorite Batman movie. It's probably in my top 10 favorite any movies of all time. So yeah,
wow,
thrilled to see the signal through the window and stand up slowly to be here.
Perfect. Well, as per usual, we do have a very official synopsis from the back of the Blu-ray 4K. What do you got today, Benner?
Yeah, that's right. So obviously we can pull a synopsis for any movie that we want from online places such as IMDb or Rotten Tomatoes or wherever. But obviously it's always best if you have a Blu-ray or a piece of physical media because they actually put in a lot of time into these synopses. Because they wanted you to buy this while picking it up off the shelf, and they've continued to do that. I actually consume this movie as 4K, if you can kind of see that. And I'll get into the 4K in a second, but because it's definitely worth discussing. But here's the synopsis. Let's go. Gotham City faces two monstrous criminal menaces: the bizarre, sinister Penguin, Danny DeVito, and the slinky, mysterious Catwoman, Michelle Pfeiffer. Can Batman, Michael Keaton, and Zoe apparently in the background.
Yeah, let me go silence her. Keep talking. I'll be back.
Can Batman, Michael Keaton battle two formidable foes at once, especially when one wants to be mayor and the other is romantically attracted to Gotham's hero? Like the Academy Award-winning 1989 original, Batman Returns is directed by movie-making wizard Tim Burton, and like the first blockbuster, it's a dazzling adventure that leaves you breathless. And that's the synopsis for Batman Returns. Popping back onto the shelf here, into the little slot. And listen, I gotta say, this 4K is absolutely amazing. It's one of the best films that I've seen on the format, and one 100% worth checking out if you do have, let's say, a PlayStation 5 or a 4K player. Batman 1 is amazing as well, but Batman Returns also looks really, really, really good. So Kells, back over to you. Let's get a breakdown of the production and the initial release of the film.
Absolutely. So this was released by a combination of Warner Brothers and Polygram Pictures. It was released on June 16th, officially 19th in 1992. Why this was released in June? I'll never know, but that's okay. Production of the film occurred from September 1991 to February 1992. Of course, directed by the incredible, I was trying to think of other words to describe other than incomprehensible, Tim Burton, absolutely fantastic. Written by Daniel Waters, who also wrote Heathers, which is an incredible factoid that I did not know about. And of course, this film stars the wonderful Michael Keaton, Danny DeVito, Michelle Pfeiffer, Christopher Walken, amazing, Michael Gough, I'm not sure how to pronounce it, but I'm going to try, Pat Hingle, and Michael Murphy. Hooray.
Awesome. And just jumping into the box office numbers, just to give people a sense as to what happened with this film when it was released back in 1992. The domestic box office was $162 million. International box office was $104 million, with a worldwide box office gross of $266 million. So $250 million back in 1992 was a massive hit. Not quite as big as the first film, but still worthy of being a box office success in the early 90s. Budget was estimated to be around 55 million. Looks like that was the initial budget of the film, but it grew to 80 million, and that's probably That's probably the more accurate number. Of course, all figures in USD. Runtime is 2 hours and 6 minutes, something that we've kept an eye on as we've done these 90s night reviews and gone back and watched movies in the 90s. And of course, I'll want to talk about who wrote it as well, Kells, because that's a very, very interesting point. And also just the fact that there's a single writer. But currently it's, we'll get to that in a second, but currently it's 81% on Rotten Tomatoes with 91 reviews, with a critical consensus that says director Tim Burton's dark, brooding atmosphere, Michael Keaton's work as the tormented hero, and the flawless casting of Danny DeVito as the Penguin and Christopher Walken as well. Christopher Walken makes the sequel better than the first. So it's a great film. And of course, let's talk about the marketing for it. Kells, what can you tell us about when the movie came out in theaters and home video?
Yeah, so there was some different taglines associated with this film, which is always one of my favorite bits because I feel like the 90s had some fantastic marketing and taglines. The first, from the sewers of Gotham, a new villain emerges. From the rooftops of Gotham, the perfect enemy comes to life. And the only one who can save the city is a creature of the night. And of course we have, well, she craves a romance she can sink her claws into. He plots a foul reign of destruction.
Oh, so punny.
Love the puns. Love the puns. Above Gotham looms its greatest hero. And lastly, and most simply, the bat, the cat, the penguin, which sounds like a very off-brand Dr. Seuss book, I think.
Awesome. Just going back to the format as well. Like I mentioned before, I watched it in 4K. I've seen this film in every kind of format. But this 4K format, I'm just going to tell you this right now. It's the best the film has ever looked. It looks absolutely stunning. It looks like you can reach into the screen and grab characters. It looks that good. And that's even from the opening sequence, where the Penguin's parents throw him into the I guess the river, or it's the river that goes into the sewer. But everything from like the colors pop, the atmosphere is great, the sound is phenomenal. Of course, they did up the budget from this movie. They knew what they were getting into from the first movie. But this format, if you love the movie, and Reid, I got to tell you this, if you don't have a 4K player and you love movies, you got to get this. You got to get a 4K player, and you got to get the first two Batman movies because they're absolutely phenomenal. I do think it's one of the best sequels, Kells, that out of the Batman franchise, at least. Kells, how did you watch this movie? Do you have any fond memories of how you first saw it?
As per usual, I have no memory of how and when I first saw it. I'm pretty sure we had it on VHS back in the day. I do remember seeing the cover for this and the original Batman on VHS in our movie collection. But this time I watched it on Crave because that's what I had available to me.
Nice. And Reid, you said this is one of your favorite movies of all time. Maybe your favorite Batman movie, definitely your favorite Batman sequel, maybe one of your favorite movies of all time. How can we ask why, and how did you first see the film? And tell us a little bit about that, because I'm super interested, to be honest.
I bet that I did not see this film before owning some of the McDonald's Happy Meal Batman Return toys.
Yes.
The little penguin car with the umbrella spinning.
Yeah.
I probably came to this movie like later. I would have been like 10 or 11 or something like that, probably. But I don't know. Something about it is just really, I think I like how grotesque it is. Like, and over time, that's been the thing that I've appreciated more and more each time I've watched it. And especially when you think about, like, the first Batman's not dark. It has its, dark elements. You cast Nicholson, he's terrifying, all this kind of things. But I do love that marketing piece where they were like, kids are going to like this movie, right? And then you watch Batman Returns. It's like so off-putting. If you brought kids to that, I would like, well, I mean, I think we know sort of colloquially how well received, quote, that was. But I think the thing that's great about it is it's such like a blank check thing from Tim Burton. He was just like, he went full German expressionist. What if we sapped even more color out of this movie? Like, I didn't bother to read the comics. I have no idea what the Penguin is. I have no idea what Catwoman is, but this is my version. I kind of love it. It's sort of just like, it's kind of reckless, but it really works.
Well, we when we decided to do this episode, we were like, I've always felt the same thing where it's like, there's so many horror elements to this film, And of course, like, I think looking back, you can say, you know, if Tim Burton was to make a movie, like a Batman movie, what would it look like? Like, let's say he hadn't made Batman 1 and 2.
Right.
And if you did it now, I would be like, I would assume this would be the movie we would get. And he would never been able to get the budget or the approval or the green light to do something like this. But I also feel like he is a director, and we've talked about this a little bit in the past too. Like, I do feel that there's some directors that benefit from kind of being on a bit of a leash or a bit of a chain with the studios. Right. And as soon as you let them off, they just go absolutely crazy. And sometimes that works out in the best possible way. And I think this is one of those examples. But I do feel like a lot of people, and again, like Reid, what you were saying, a lot of parents took their kids to see this movie and they were not ready for it. And it is a gross movie. Like, it's not only just the color that's being sapped out of it, but like the characters are slimier, they're more scumbaggy. Christopher Walken, obviously always brilliant, but just such a treat to see him like being directed by Tim Burton in this sort of like bizarre comic book Christmas horror flick.
Yeah. Well, and Batman's such like a nimble character. Like, you can make a fun Batman movie, you can make a realistic Batman movie, you can make a horror-ish kind of Batman movie. All of those things work. And I think part of why I like Batman Returns is that I have a slight suspicion we'll never get it again. I mean, A, because it exists, but also B, like, I think the leash is a lot tighter on those movies as they get made.
Yeah, for 100%. And I think, you know, it's funny too, because one I should mention too. So Reid, you are our first guest on 90s Night. So you're the initial. We usually just do these. Oh, there you go.
I'm just getting thumbs up. Thumbs up.
Does it do it for me? Why do I get nothing? I get nothing. That's
your thumbs aren't visible enough. You've got a microphone.
Thumbs suck, man. So we usually do these just by ourselves, and we kind of watch a movie like individually. We watch it separately, and then we come back and talk about it. So Kells was like, "Hey, I know a guy who loves this film. We should have him on." But so we want to do this kind of all the time, but you are our very first guest on 90s Night. So thanks again for being here.
Yeah, thank you.
And I mean, I think when we look back on, so there's a couple things we've kind of taken note as we've done this series. And one is how often films come in at around the 2-hour mark. That seemed to be sort of like that was the sweet spot for studio films back in the 90s. Totally. Also, one writer is something that we kind of notice in general when we're talking about franchises or other films. We go back and look at an example of that was we didn't do an episode on this. We were talking about the Indiana Jones movies recently, and Last Crusade was written by one writer, and you kind of have a clear, consistent vision of kind of what the story is, who the characters are, where those arcs are, and you don't have all these people kind of like jumping in and out of the script and adding things and bloating it up with all this sort of, you know, stuff that you don't need. So we always kind of take note of that. So that's a great example that this is one of them. Also, from the writer of Heathers, I think explains quite a bit in this film, which I never knew actually before I kind of revisited it this time around. And I just feel like again, we look at things and we're like, you'd never see that in a movie today. Like you'd never see, like, I think the fight sequences between Catwoman and Batman are awesome because I think that like, it's funny. It's like, you can see it from a 90s perspective where we're going to make these kind of two anti-heroes equal, like physically, and they're going to have different aspects. But I don't know if you'd see a full out fight in like a Marvel movie or a DC movie today that's similar to that one.
I mean, a thing that's nice about 90s movies too is, you know, they're shooting these I mean, I know we've been moving back to kind of more physical sets anyway, but they're shooting these on sound stages or on physical sets or on locations and stuff like that. They've only got X number of cameras because they're also shooting on film. You don't get the luxury of like, let's just like keep shooting it forever and ever, because you have to kind of watch this like finite stock that you've got. And so I think you get some like longer, like the edits are longer. We're not quick cutting all the time. Like sometimes that's used to really good effect in something like Winter Soldier or something like that. But when you look at like these older movies, you're kind of forced to have like actual choreo that you can track. You know, you don't get the just kind of shaky cam quick edit to like chop out some of like the awkward bits. So what I love about it is you can tell what's awkward. It's like Keaton in the suit can't turn his neck, right? But he's doing all these moves as he's fighting. And I think the fights look great. You know, and Michelle Pfeiffer got so good with the whip. I think we've all seen that clip of her doing the mannequin heads, like that shot. She actually does it. Like that stuff's amazing. And I think you get that with older movies a little bit because they had to. That you could only movie magic so much back then.
Yeah, well, this is also one of the last major Hollywood films to be done kind of like the old-fashioned way. They had like the trompe-l'oeil sets, they had the indoor sound stages, miniatures, lots of other like old-school Hollywood-style filmmaking, and again, like a lot of German expressionists in the visuals as well, and also just kind of lots of little tips of the hat, like the fact that Christopher Walken's character is named Max Schreck is incredible. There's this Nosferatu, the actor that played Nosferatu. So I think that, again, it kind of plays into those really kind of old Hollywood feel. It just feels like something that you could quite easily watch and have it be from like the 1920s to 1940s, except for the fact that it's Tim Burton, so it looks absolutely effing insane.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, let's talk about the casting too, because I think that's such a great part. It's such a big part. You just mentioned Christopher Walken, who I like. Listen, I loved Christopher Walken and loved like joking around about Christopher Walken before that was funny. Okay. Before that was cool, a cool thing to do. He's an amazing actor. I don't care what anyone says. I'm hanging my Santa hat on that. We used to rent Christopher Walken movies, like specifically, like we would go and rent like 3 or 4 different Christopher Walken movies and watch like 3 of them in a row just because like we loved him so much. But he's absolutely amazing in this film. And he's also as well, it's funny too, because a lot of people sort of forget that he's actually a villain in this film. Like not when you watch it, but it's always like the Penguin and Catwoman, but it's really the Penguin, Catwoman, and Christopher Walken, right?
I mean, I'd make the argument he's the villain in the film.
Yeah, right. He's kind of setting the others up,
which is even crazier because he's just a totally original character. They're just like, and we put Christopher Walken in. He's the villain manipulating these other characters that we assume actually have a lot more agency than they do. Like the Penguin is such like a stooge in this, which really works well. Danny DeVito plays it great, but it's crazy to be like, we made up a brand new character. They're the main villain of this Batman movie.
Well,
that's a very good point. Yeah.
And also like, I think like, what's awesome about this film too, is like, I don't know if Danny DeVito like owns this role. He owns this role in this film 100%. But I think you could make the case that other people have played the Penguin. I do feel though that Michelle Pfeiffer, like this is her role. No one's actually been able to take it away from her. I think Anne Hathaway was great in the Dark Knight series and all that stuff, but or Dark Knight Rises, I guess. But I just feel like Michelle Pfeiffer is, and again, Reid, what you were saying, like that behind the scenes thing where she actually practiced like the how to use the whip, and she could whip off that. Like, it's crazy like how much time and effort she put into this role. And again, she was at the time, she was like a really, like, she was just right at the height of her popularity, I think, like in the early 90s. And I mean, obviously she's gone on to have a very storied career, of course, but at the time, I think they got the right people for these roles. And Danny DeVito is like that. It's like that casting as well, that like he should never have taken this role for some reason, but he was like, screw it, I'll do it. Sure.
There's sorry, you go.
I was gonna say, apparently Jack Nicholson, after the success of Batman, convinced Danny DeVito to take the role because he knew he was kind of going through some financial hiccups, and he's like, hey man, like, trust me, like if you do this movie, you are going to be laughing. And it worked, and he did, and he's absolutely perfect in this role. I think I can only ever see him as like Frank Reynolds in my mind, because I love It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia, but it's really funny to see Frank Reynolds as the Penguin at the same time. I think like it still works.
Well, let's throw up a couple of, as we talk, I'm just going to throw up a couple of lobby cards here to release, but we can talk over these. But of course, there's a great shot of Michelle Pfeiffer and Danny DeVito as the Penguin and Catwoman, respectively. I mean, I feel that those costumes have held up as well. I did try and find a lobby card of Christopher Walken, but I couldn't find one that was good enough to put up here. But Sorry, Mr. Walken.
I think there's a real secret sauce in this movie too, which, I mean, those costumes are great. Both Michelle Pfeiffer and Danny DeVito are playing their characters really well, but the real secret sauce for me is that Michelle Pfeiffer has the exact right kind of like creepy, off-putting,
Mm.
sexy energy as Michael Keaton, because I think trying to find someone that like romantically pairs with Michael Keaton is a lot harder than just casting someone. And like, you know, Kim Basinger's fine in the first one, but Michael Keaton is Michael Keaton, right? You know, and in this movie, you go like, I get why these two are drawn to each other. They're both real weirdos, you know, like, and there's something great about it. They're both these like leather clad sexy weirdos, and all of their scenes resonate so well. They've got incredible chemistry, and that's like I'd say 60% of what makes this movie work is just that when they're on screen together, you just believe everything.
Yeah, absolutely. I love the scene when it's Selena Kyle and Bruce Wayne having their little meeting at Wayne Manor, and they have that kind of moment where like they each kind of accidentally touch each other's owie spots, and then they're like, "Ooh," and they just kind of like hide it and keep going. And I don't know. There's something, like you said, there's just something about their chemistry that just works so well, because, like you said, they're both these leather clad weirdos, and they just fit like a weird fitted leather glove.
You know, and I hate using this analogy, but it's so true. There's a real cat and mouse game in this movie between the two characters, and I feel that is, like you were just saying, Kells, it comes out really well in when they're not their alter egos, just as much as it does in when they're in costume. Like Reid, like as you were saying, they're like these weirdos when they're in costume and stuff, and it's sexy and it's like slick and all that stuff. But then when they're out of their costumes, they're still kind of like awkward and like, but playful with one another. So
they're these very like damaged people, right? You know, like it's we like to have fun with Keaton's like, you want to get nuts, let's get nuts from the last movie, right? Like that's we love going back to that as like a weird kind of Keaton energy moment. But you know, he plays it as like a guy who's like deeply traumatized, right? And then you get to this movie, and the person that gets nuts is Michelle Pfeiffer with like tongue kissing Christopher Walken with a taser. They have the same insane kind of like, I didn't expect anyone to do that right now. You know, like why would you with a gun pointed at you just smash a different vase and say let's get nuts and then get shot? Like all of these things, like they kind of have this kind of crazy damaged sort of vibe to them. I think they play off each other so well. I would have loved to have seen just more of them. Like I know like the movie's kind of perfect in its own way, so you don't want to touch it, but like it's kind of too bad we only get them in the one movie.
Yeah. I would love to see them do more of these two characters, because it's just like you said, they have such perfect chemistry, and they play off each other so well that I feel like we haven't really seen that same chemistry in another Batman, other than Christian Bale and the Joker. I think like they have great chemistry, but it's a very different kind of chemistry than this one. I
think Reid, I think you put your finger on it there. Is that it has this weird secret sauce that I don't think you could ever recreate, because it's almost like they were trying to recreate obviously 1989 Batman, and then ended up with this. And whether or not this is better than that, I'm not sure. But it does seem like that's a component of it as well. Like it needed to be bigger, it needed more characters, it needed to be like, I guess darker. Like a lot of people said the Batman 1989 was too dark, and then I don't know, it's just ramped up to 11, right?
They're also high energy though, is the other thing, because I think you can make a strong argument that Robert Pattinson and Zoe Kravitz are actually pretty well paired as a Batman and Catwoman, but they are, in my opinion, so dull to watch. And I think they're doing a good performance, but what they've been asked to do is so boring. But like Keaton and Michelle Pfeiffer are like electric. Like every time they're on screen, you're like, what are they doing? Like they can move an eye and you'd be like, what did he see? What did he see? Like,
and you always like, where are they going? Yeah.
And that's what's missing from some of these other ones. Like, I do think there are other decent pairings, but they are also just interesting, which is like helpful, for the movie.
Very true. Very true. And like gadgets too, I feel like also adds so much to it as well.
So let's talk about some of the other stuff like that we like about this film. So Kells, you just mentioned gadgets. Yeah.
It's just chaos. Like this.
Gadgets are always cool. And I think when you were a kid or even when you were like a teenager, like anything that had a gadget in it was neat. And I think especially back in the 80s and 90s, they really put some effort into like essentially like the set department and the art direction and that sort of stuff. Whoever's working on that shit, right, is like, we're going to build something that actually looks really cool and actually functions, because they needed it to function on screen. They didn't really have the ability to sort of enhance it with CGI at the time, like a little bit in the late 90s or mid 90s, I guess. But but really it was a lot of camera tricks and a lot of like just actual physical stuff on screen, which always works. It always works the best. Practical effects are always 100% better than, well, I wouldn't say 100%, but I feel they're always better than CGI. But talk about the gadgets, Kells. What do you like about them?
Yeah, well, I think that one of the things that I love about the gadgets in this movie as well is that they're all so perfectly Tim Burton at the same time. Like everything, right down to like there's a clown that's played by Doug Jones, which I love that little cameo. I think this was like his first like role, and even just like the little bomb device that he has. It has like that spinning like top on it with the design, and like literally every detail is so perfectly quirky and kooky that there's no boring props in this. Every prop is over the top ridiculous, and I love that.
There's remote controlled penguin rockets. There's the giant rubber duck.
That's the best. The giant rubber duck is awesome.
I want one.
There's my personal favorite, which is just sewer elevator when when the penguin makes his entrance and they're like, oh, he saved the baby, and no one goes, why did we put an elevator in that storm drain? That's like one of my favorite things ever. Gotham City is such a crazy place. They're like, elevator in a storm drain, that's fine, but who's this guy? There's lots of, it's a movie full of gadgets, and I like that. Like anytime you see stuff, there's always like everything has to click like at least 3 times. Like there's a lot of like the mechanical components, because we're not into like boop 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 like computers, like
it's like
as
flipping
gadgets
switches.
There's
and
always like and then it fires like a grapple or something. And there's something so fun about that, because I think they feel like toys, which is ironic because again, this movie's not made for kids. And also, the movies that came later, the Schumacher ones, they get that part of it right. Like Schumacher always talked about how his movies, he wanted them to feel like a kid playing with his toys. And that real, like the Schumacher trademark is all the suit up scenes. They're like, all of that stuff's so physical. And I think it comes from this kind of aesthetic of like these mechanical gadgets and these little pieces like that.
Little bop it, twist it, pull it of like bat toys.
Anything with a spinny thing on it, right, is like makes it a gadget and automatically makes it a gadget, right?
But it has to have like the spiral on it too, which I love. That like there's those little details that like even though it's a spinny thing, it has this twisty little design on it just to make it a little bit quirkier. And I love that.
Do you know where we can put that twisty little design? We can put that in kids' toys at McDonald's. That's where we're gonna put it.
Exactly.
Talking about the horror elements too of this film, like going back to so the one scene that was like, which always like kind of like, to me, I always thought it was pretty crazy to be in when I first saw the movie, was like the scene where the penguin eats that guy's nose and bites his freaking nose off and blood's gushing everywhere. And apparently that was the scene that a lot of parents really hated. They didn't think it should have been in a PG-13 movie. I think you can make the case either way, but it's pretty violent. But also like throughout this whole movie, especially if like the political undertones of like, it's almost like there is almost like a commentary here or a satire on a lot of it. That guy is actually, I think he's an image consultant. Like he's trying to get the penguin to be more less gross, I guess. But when he shows up, he is literally the grossest guy that shows up
eating a fish.
And I was gonna say I couldn't remember if I was putting two things together, but he's eating the raw fish, and I don't know if he's actually like eating a raw fish or if that's just a great prop. But there's biting the nose. He's also like with his flipper like groping a woman going like, "Here, have a button," like
Yeah,
doing that.
yeah.
And then when he goes upstairs after, I think this is the moment parents wouldn't like. He goes upstairs after. Catwoman is there, and he goes, "Just the pussy I've been looking for."
Yeah,
and
yeah.
like, cover your ears, Timmy. No.
And
He's
also
so
too, that's
disgusting.
in that scene too, because it goes on. It's like it's like the like the tension that we were talking about before with like, you know, because there is a lot of sexual chemistry between Michael Keaton and Michelle Pfeiffer. But there's also a lot of creep chemistry between Danny DeVito and Michelle Pfeiffer in that scene, because it's like, because Penguin's just kind of like walking on, he's out of breath, and he's just like, it's like, I don't understand, like some part, like I love that this movie exists, like I love it, but it's just, it's so funny because they're like, imagine filming that being like, should we dial that back a bit? Or they're like, nah, like let's just go full tilt.
But I think you get to do that though, because DeVito is such a good actor that there's a few very human moments for the Penguin, a character that you're not supposed to see as human at all, right? He's like raised in the sewer. He's this gross monster man, but he's so easily manipulated by Shrek, by Catwoman, by whatever. And his entire thing is just, I want to be loved. And there's a couple of moments that are great. Now, obviously, the slightest little thing, he's like, I'll kidnap all the firstborn of Gotham. Like, he's crazy. But there's he plays those couple of sincere moments so nicely that when he gets there, you go like, yeah, so would I. Like, you know, like he's such a talented actor that like through all of that monstery stuff, through the French flipper tricks and whatever he's talking about, you go like, he plays like someone just very sad. And I think that's also kind of what I like about this movie. I'm a real sucker for like a sad version of a thing. Like I love Daniel Craig as James Bond. I love a sad boy. And this is such a like a sad Batman movie. And I think that's a vibe that almost every other Batman hasn't gotten right.
Yeah.
Is how sad Batman is. And this movie goes right into it with everyone. You know, Catwoman's sad, the Penguin's sad, Batman's sad. The only person that's not is Max Schreck, but he's the villain. So,
and he's also just delightfully thick. Like, oh,
I mean, Alfred as well. I mean, played by Michael Gough, right? So, is it Gough or Gough? We weren't sure. I think it's Gough, right?
I've been saying Gough, but I might be wrong.
Gough, maybe. I think it's Gough. I think it is Gough.
All right, tell us in the comments below if we've screwed that.
Tell us when we're wrong.
Just before we get out of the casting, I should say special mention to Penguin's parents, who are played by Diane Salinger and Paul Rubens. So rest in peace, Paul Rubens. You're the best. And but awesome little cameo in there for them playing his parents, right? So
that little cameo was actually intended for Burgess Meredith, who played the Penguin in the 60s Adam West Batman. But Burgess Meredith's health had really declined at that point and he couldn't do it. But that was the original intention, was sneaking him in there to be a Cobblepot.
And wait, am I confusing something? Because Penguin, when he's a baby, when he's in the cage, he eats the cat, right?
He does, yeah.
Yeah. Like, I mean, and this is like, people are like, I don't understand why you're talking about Batman Returns. It's not even a horror movie. I'm like, it's a fucking horror movie. Like, it's like he eats a cat in the first like 5 minutes of the film. Yeah. And then these parents like basically try and kill their kid by throwing him into the water.
Yep.
Kind of like a cat, right? Like you, or not like you, you know what I mean? Like
Go
they
on.
would do 100 years ago with extra cats, which they shouldn't have done, which is bad. Don't do that. But they kind of throw him in the, they eats the cat and they throw him in the sewer and then he shows up later. But even like the opening scene of the film is like, it's just like pure carnage, like all the time in this movie. And again, it's like, I would consider it a Christmas movie as well. I don't know if we want to debate that, but I would say the biggest question mark with Die Hard, right, was like, is Die Hard a Christmas movie? There's Christmas music in it, right? There's Christmas trees. It takes place during Christmas or the holiday season. Santa hats are in it. Like, I mean, I think it's got a lot of things that check a lot of boxes. And this movie especially is the same. I think takes place during the Christmas season or holiday season.
There's a whole tree lighting ceremony.
There's giant presents that people pop out of. And I mean, I don't think there's any debate personally. I don't know if anyone's going to disagree with me on this panel, but if you don't think it's a Christmas movie, we will debate you in the comments below. But is there anything else in this film that you think sort of like makes it a Christmas film or a horror flick for that matter?
I mean, I do think that this, like, they don't forget that it's Christmas. Like I think part of the reason Die Hard always comes up controversially is that despite all of its Christmas trappings, very little in Die Hard like really uses Christmas. Like there's like the closest you get is like ho ho ho, like now I have a machine gun.
You know, like, I don't know. I feel like this is gonna be a whole other podcast.
But for me, you know, like the scene where Selena Kyle is at Wayne Manor, it feels like winter. It feels like Christmas time, like with the fire and that. Like I think they take the tone and the feel of Christmas and they put it everywhere. Now that's slightly unfair because like who's gonna put a garland in a vent for Die Hard? But I think because we're in the atmosphere of Christmas for a lot more of this movie, I'd be like Batman Returns is 100% a Christmas movie.
But also just like feels like a hazy shade of winter, just like all the coloring, all the tone, like everything with it feels like that coldness of a Christmas Eve, like crispy night. And again, like there's the lights, there's even the comment that Catwoman makes at the end of the movie where she's talking about saving her last life for next Christmas. You know, it's they constantly kind of reference back to Christmas in some way, shape, or form.
And Gotham
while having it feel like it. Yeah.
Gotham is vaguely Dickensian too, in the way where like it just looks like a sooty factory town that no one cleaned. Like I think it's easy to picture like someone could open any of those gray windows and go, "You boy, fetch me the biggest goose in the window," and it would fit totally.
Yeah, 100%, absolutely.
Oh man, that just reminds me of like the Muppets Christmas Carol and Michael Caine in that movie, and like how he got into that film and was like, they're like, so it's Muppets, right? And he's like, I'm gonna play Scrooge like a Shakespearean character.
Yeah, as serious as they possibly can.
And that only reminds me that just makes me want like Michael Caine to be in these movies, but I'm glad he's not because he played such an awesome Alfred in Nolan's trilogy.
Yes,
but
he did, yeah.
But still, I mean, Christopher Walken, again, amazing in this film, and he has one of my favorite quotes in the film too. But anyway, do we want to jump into quotes? What do we want, or do you want to discuss any other horror features? What makes this a horror flick? Because I know that we have certain people that we know, Kells, that are going to be like, you guys are donkeys. I don't know why you're reviewing Batman Returns as a horror flick, but I'm going to say killed cat first 5 minutes and bitten off nose, blood squirting out of nose. Those two things make it horror movie.
Also green blood from the penguin's nose when he comes out of after he gets.
Oh yeah.
Got, like bile,
like
all
green
that
goo. Yeah, it looks like something from like Goosebumps. It's great. I also like the whole
bile is always a key indicator of
horror movies. Also, just like the fact that the penguin sort of henchman or the insane clown posse that shows up in this movie, it's complete organized chaos in the best way possible in that first opening scene where they jump out of the president and cause havoc all over the place. But there's something about the costume design of this movie too that like just speaks horror to me, and I think it comes down to those clownish costumes and the way that each character kind of has their own, like, again, very Dickensian, very like German expressionist type of like grit to them.
Dude, the motorcycle goons, and they're like the huge skull
the huge skull helmets,
amazing. Like they're awesome. So horror.
Exactly.
I think you can't underestimate like being the sadness factor, like a totally classic Gothic horror, like the penguins marching penguin's body into the water, and like
it's like the little funeral march of the penguins.
All of those things feel like, I mean, they're sillier, but they feel like Frankenstein or like these kind of other things. Just like he's so misunderstood.
Yeah, like, he's like a little creature from the Penguin Lagoon.
You were this close, but he's afraid of fire, and you didn't know that. Like, and that's what I think of there. And that, I mean, as a comic book fan, I also that's Swamp Thing to me too, right? Like those two things are just like someone sad shambling into the water. In this case, it's the penguin and he's dead, but it's that same thing. I'm like, yep, that's horror.
Yeah, that's how you can tell a horror thing. Is if someone's sadly shambling into water, then you know you're watching a horror movie.
I'm gonna get lit up in these comments.
So I agree. Like it feels very Frankenstein. Like that's a great great comparison too. Yeah.
I also feel like the just the whole gothic nature, like the music, the score, is overly gothic as well. Like that's
Totally.
not a surprise in a Tim Burton movie, of course, but this particular film, even the trailer, it does feel like, and that trailer is awesome, and we'll take another look at it at the end of the show here, but what a great trailer. And what I love about that trailer too is like they don't even say the name of the film. They just show the logo and some snow, and they don't even say. Everyone just knew. Like that's how like pumped people were for this film. But I was going to say, Kells, you mentioned why it came out in the summer. For the obvious reason that we all would know is that, you know, summer is the big box office thing. But I would say in the 90s, it would take longer for films to come out on home video and stuff. So I don't know this for sure, but my guess would be that, hey, if we put it out in June, it can do like a 3-4 month run, 5-month run at the box office, and then we can have it ready to go for the Christmas season when it came out in December. I don't know what the home video release is. That's my guess. I'm actually going to look that up while somebody else talks, but but let's see if we can get confirmation on that, because that actually makes sense.
It does seem like the perfect Christmas gift. Yeah.
Can I give a little quick shout out? Here's another little horror element too. Is Catwoman? You know, it's easy to look at the Penguin and go, he's a horror figure, but this Catwoman is like supernaturally inspired. Like she full on dies, and then a bunch of cats lick her to life, and then the movie is very clever about how it treats the 9 lives thing.
Yes,
I love that too. That's a great
that supernatural element like makes her even creepier, because, you know, like the people of Gotham view Batman as supernatural, and we know he's not. And then you get into this movie and you go like, oh my god, like, is she actually have 9 lives? And they're so smart with how they play it ambiguously. Like her getting shot, we don't wait for her to die and then get up again. She just goes like 4, 5. She just counts them as you go. And I really love kind of how they mess with you with that, but I think that contributes to the horror kind of piece of it too, is that Catwoman is also like unnatural. Like she comes back different, right? Like she's seen the other side and it's changed her. Like something came back with her. It's Pet Cemetery rules.
Yeah.
Like, you
know? But also as well, like Reid, like you were just saying, like it's like kind of like a supernatural element, but it's never really too on the nose. So is it a supernatural thing, or is she just sort of mentally unstable and a bit crazy, and that was what kind of makes her a great sort of villain or the anti-hero, or sort of like she's definitely the other side of the coin that Batman is, where they're very, very, very close, and then she's not necessarily looking to she's not necessarily looking to create carnage per se. She just wants to get revenge on the people that have kind of wronged her a bit.
Right.
Whereas the Penguin is, like you mentioned, is kind of manipulated, and he has this very kind of sad, tragic story attached to him instead of her.
They're all consumed by it, right? Like the Penguin can't let it go. There's that great moment between Keaton and Pfeiffer where they're like, we could stop now. And they kind of both know they can't, you know? And I think that's, I mean, sad, great, love it. And then also I think it's like part of what makes them all kind of play so well as a trio.
Yeah, absolutely.
So just to confirm, the home video release for Batman Returns was October 21st in 1992. So just in time for Halloween, which is maybe more fitting than Christmas. It came out on VHS, obviously, and Laserdisc. And then, of course, later on it came out on DVD and then Blu-ray and 4K. So, October 21st, 1992. I'm sure this was the movie that every kid wanted to receive for Christmas, but no parent wanted to buy it for them. Hey, I know we've only got a few minutes left, so let's just jump around into some quotes here. This movie is very quotable.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
And who wants to go first?
I've got one, if you'll permit me. I'll do my best Danny DeVito here. So, why is there always someone who brings eggs and tomatoes to a speech?
A great, like, how did that line end? Maybe it was ad-libbed. Who knows, right?
It's perfect.
Kells, got anything?
I love the I'm listed, I'm tempted, I'm working. I thought that was a great little back and forth between Catwoman and Batman there, or between Selina Kyle and Bruce Wayne, rather. I've got a couple other ones, but Benner, what do you got? And we'll take turns. We'll cycle around.
I'm going to do my best Christopher Walken right now, because I love this quote when he goes, I wish I could hand out world peace and unconditional love wrapped in a big bow. So I love that line. I just think it's like so cynically Walken.
Mhm.
And I think I love Walken because I think Christopher Walken in real life is probably like a really, really nice guy. And I think every time he's on film, he just seems like this, like this nihilist.
Yeah.
Like every role that he's in, right? Or at least every villainous role he's in. But yeah.
I also have a Walken one. Forgive me for the Walken impression. Here we go. Selena Kyle, you're fired. And Bruce Wayne, why are you dressed up as Batman?
You're fired.
I love that so much. I enjoy when Penguin's coming back for his final blow and he goes, "Ah, shit, I picked a cute one." With the umbrellas. I love that one.
My other favorite quote is he's from Catwoman, where she says, "Mistletoe can be deadly if you eat it, but a kiss can be even deadlier if you mean it." I just think that's just kind of a quirky sort of like rhyming sort of dialogue that they have in there, which I think kind of, again, it just sort of makes everything seem like this kind of really weird, whimsical kind of nightmare storybook thing that's going on, right?
But it also makes it like a sexual thriller. You're like, oh man, this movie's got everything.
It's like it really. I mean, I think you could make the argument in saying if there wasn't that chemistry between Michael Keaton and Michelle Pfeiffer, if this movie even succeeds, like I think that's the thing. I think that's the glue that holds it together, and I think that influences the movie because I think when those actors are interacting with other characters, I think it carries over. Like I think when Michelle Pfeiffer's interacting with Christopher Walken or the Penguin, I think it all works. And I'm not saying Danny DeVito is out in the cold here. I'm just saying that, like, I just feel like there are the expression you could cut the tension with a knife. I think applies to every scene that Pfeiffer and Keaton are in, right? So
100%.
Awesome. Okay, so let's talk
James, do you have one more?
Oh yeah, yep, sorry.
Oh, I didn't want to step on toes, but obviously my favorite line in the whole movie is just meow and then the building blowing up in the background.
Yes.
Awesome. So let's talk about, just before we go, let's talk about some interesting facts, tie-ins to the film. Kells, I know you had some kind of written up, and Reid, I'm sure you know a few as well. And then we'll get to some closing thoughts on Batman Returns. But Kells, what do you got over there?
Yeah, so I know that Danny DeVito apparently remained in character between takes, and the fact that the set was so huge, it took up at least 50% of the Warner Brothers lot was taken up by Gotham City sets, and apparently they had to like move them around so much to try and make room for other ones that Michelle Pfeiffer would like get lost on her way to set every day because she'd show up and like, this isn't where the set was yesterday. Where am I supposed to go? And just kind of keep wandering around getting lost. And then another little fun note that I took great pleasure in learning is that the production wanted to use king penguins for the film, but the only tame ones in captivity were at a bird sanctuary in the English countryside. So the birds were flown over to the States in a refrigerated hold of a plane. They were given their own refrigerated trailer and a swimming pool with half a ton of fresh ice every day. They had fresh fish, that's a tongue twister, delivered daily straight from the docks to them directly. Even though the temperature outside frequently topped 100 degrees, the entire set was refrigerated down to 35 degrees. And they also had an around-the-clock bodyguard, which I think is adorable. So I guess the penguins enjoyed the experience because following their stint in Hollywood, most of them had mated and produced eggs, which is the sure sign of a contented penguin. So I thought that was really charming.
There you go.
That's one of my favorite facts about that movie is just the lengths they had to go to get
for the
real
penguins.
penguins.
Yeah.
I've got one fun fact, which is that Batman is wearing Air Jordan 6s for the whole movie. Then they constructed
the best Air Jordans, by the way.
part.
Those are the best Jordans, Jordan 6s. And if anyone asks me why, it's because one, they're the best, but two, if they're good enough for Batman, they're good enough for anyone, right?
Exactly.
Yeah. Awesome. I didn't have anything else to add to that, but just other than the fact that I do remember when this film came out, just a side story is that I just remember wanting everything that to do with it. I loved the Diet Coke tie-ins and ads and stuff like that. I thought they were great, and also the card sets that came out were like really good. I think it was like Tops, like Top Shelf Tops or something like that, put out these really slick looking Batman Returns. I mean, I just remember Batman Returns being everywhere at the time. I think Zellers did a card set as well. Yeah,
that's the left hand doesn't know what the right hand's doing of this movie. Is like the marketing department went whole hog. They're like merch, kids, families, and they were like, Tim, how's the movie coming? He's like, don't look over here. And they just kept doing
pay no attention to the man behind the curtain.
This weird perverse sexual horror movie. And then meanwhile they were like, we've got all these amazing toys, this incredible merch. Like it's such like a.
I think that was a carryover from the 80s too, because like I remember like every 80s action movie, like, you know, had a cartoon, right? Like, and then had a toy line. Yes. So like RoboCop and Rambo, like those are not movies for kids. And they're like, you know what we should do, Bill? What's that, Jack? We should make a cartoon out of this. We can sell some toys, you know? So I feel like that's totally kind of maybe a carryover from the first like from the 80s. And I think because the first movie was in 89, I think a lot of that merchandising kind of protocol or theory, I sort of think, or I don't even know if it's a theory. It's more of like, we're going to market everything.
Well, I mean, like the Batman animated series must have been in production by this point, but I think it comes out in 91 or 92 is when it starts. But and you know, it's got a very sad tone and takes a lot of that gothic influence and stuff like that. But like you can tell, it's still like, you know, I don't know. Something was a disconnect. Maybe if it had come out like after the movie or something, maybe it'd be different. But it could have been a thing where people just had this expectation, but then you go in and it's like, no, Tim Burton just like made maybe one of the coolest superhero movies ever, but it's not what anyone paying for it wanted at any stage of the supply chain. But it's such an amazing artifact. Like I'm so glad he went rogue and just did whatever he wanted, because it's such like an incredible movie. You'd never make this movie again.
Well, apparently Sam Hamm, who kind of came up with an original screenplay for it, or screenplay draft, I should say, he was kind of one of the story creators of this film. Originally, the film had the Penguin and Catwoman going after hidden treasure together. So Tim Burton was like,
boring.
No. Yeah. So he brought in Daniel Waters, who wrote Heathers, who came up with the concept of like an evil business mogul backing a bid for mayor for the Penguin. Yeah. They're like, let's go with that instead, which is a much, much better concept. But I can also see why they maybe started making toys based on the concept of hunting for treasure with the Catwoman and Penguin.
Yeah, weird. Yeah, that I don't like the pitch for that movie at all.
Buried treasure? What are they, pirates? Like
Goonies. They're Goonies.
Starring Danny DeVito. All right. Well, listen, that pretty much does it for another episode of 90s Night. But let's go around the horn here and get some final thoughts, closing thoughts. And I would ask you to make specific reference as to whether or not this is a Christmas movie or a horror movie, or both, just for the benefit of our audience who'll be watching this. Kells, you want to go first?
Yeah. Closing thoughts. It had been a long time since I've seen this one. But this is, I agree, like probably my favorite Batman movie at this point, and absolutely a horror movie, absolutely a Christmas movie. It's the perfect package of Batman. And I would not have it any other way.
Over to you, Reid.
Yes, it's a Christmas movie. Yes, it's a horror movie. And yes, it's the best Batman movie ever made. It's the best superhero movie ever made. And it has all that great Hollywood kind of goodness. Sets, miniatures, monster men biting noses,
monster men.
Weirdly sexy statues of men doing this.
Yeah. Man, Gotham City. That's a town full of awakenings.
Gotham fucks.
What a place. Like imagine the clubs there, right?
Right.
Like we just see the tree lighting. Like
I mean, in the next movies, we just see all of the blacklight gangs, like Coolio's blacklight gang under the bridge or whatever. But like, surely there's some cool clubs there too. You know?
I love this movie too, just because of how batshit crazy it is. No pun intended. But I love just the sheer amount of. I just love the idea of carnage in this movie. I think, you know, even just from the trailer, like the giant rubber ducky coming out of which is hilarious as the giant rubber ducky, but like coming out, it just blows everything up. Like how many people were killed or like maimed in this explosion when he just wanted to make an entrance. And it's just like this sort of like, it's all this carnage that's happening. I think it's a Christmas movie just as much as Die Hard is a Christmas movie, and Die Hard is a Christmas movie for the record. And I think it's a gothic horror movie, and I think everyone you guys talking about like it feeling like a Frankenstein movie, or feeling like this, like the evil castle on the hill type of stuff. Is kind of flipped around in this film, but like Gotham City's never been looked dirtier and more filled with more darkness and despair than it has in this film. And I think that again, Reid, like I think you put your finger on it when you said it's like that's that secret sauce that kind of drives this movie along. I think the chemistry is great, and also I just get a kick out of thinking of like what Warner Brothers executives said when they saw the final cut of this film. And because again, like Reid, you mentioned this too, like was the fact that they were just filming on film, they're filming on sets. You can't really go in and like you can't do anything with this film. Like how it was delivered is probably how it shows up. And I'm surprised too that so much stuff was left in it. I'm guessing maybe because Tim Burton had final cut, but I have no way of guessing of confirming that. But something tells me that he kind of was able to do whatever he wanted to do, and that was the only way he was going to return for the sequel. Maybe, I don't know, but he never returned for a third movie after this one, and I think it's pretty obvious why, from a commercial family point of view. But I'm glad it exists for us in 2023, so we can revisit it 30 years later and get a kick out of the not so insanity that is Batman Returns. So anyway, that's those are my thoughts. Thanks everyone for tuning in. I really appreciate it. Again, big thanks to hey, see, you did that. I don't know how you do that thing. Like, we got to figure that out. That doesn't work for any. It must be the hat. I think it's the hat.
It's my Santa magic.
So but of course, big thanks Reid Vanier from Dr. DC podcast as well. And Reid, let's give you just a couple quick minutes to what are you working on right now? How can people find you online? We'll of course link it down below in the comment section for people to check you out. But what are you working on now?
Sure. So you can find me on my two podcasts. So there's the Dr. DC podcast. We talk about DC Comics. Batman Returns comes up a lot. And then also Ghost Facers, which is a supernatural rewatch. We're going through every single episode of the CW Supernatural. We're partway through season 8. You can get those wherever you find your podcasts. And yeah, we're Dr. DC is nominated for a Canadian Podcast Award again this year. So we're waiting to see if that comes through for us again. But yeah, that's it.
Awesome. Well, listen, if you ever feel like coming back on the show and talking some shit about the 90s and the movies from 90s night, we'd love to have you back, man. Thanks so much for making the time. I know you're a busy guy, so we really definitely appreciate that.
Oh no, thank you. This was great. I had a blast. Yeah, I'd love to come back.
Yeah, talk about my favorite movie of all time. Sure.
Yeah,
I can carve out an hour. Well, that does it for another episode of 90s Night. Of course, my name is Benner, and I've been your host for tonight. Of course, I'm always joined by my esteemed co-host Kells McNells over on this side. Yes, this side of the screen.
You got it right.
And of course, if you are tuning in for the first time, we definitely appreciate you coming to watch the show. But make sure you check out the rest of our episodes on our YouTube channel, which you can find on YouTube under Black Fawn Distro. And of course, remember to subscribe, hit that subscribe button, hit the thumbs up if you like this video, and the bell. You'll get notifications on our next episodes. We are going to be back in probably after the Christmas break with more episodes of 90s Night. We've got some other stuff lined up, which I think we had already announced, but we can't remember. So we're just going to wait until we get to the Instagram. But check us out on Instagram. We'll announce it there. And before we go, we're going to play the trailer for Batman Returns again, just because it's so awesome. Have a happy holidays, happy Hanukkah, Merry Christmas, all that stuff. Hope you are well and safe and have a great, some great time off during the holiday season. Thanks so much for tuning in 2023, and we will see you in early 2024. Peace out, guys. Take care.
I've been down here too long. It's time for me to ascend.
From the sewers of Gotham, a new villain emerges.
You didn't invite me, so I crashed.
From the rooftops of Gotham, The perfect enemy comes to life.
I am Catwoman. Hear me roar. Yeah.
And the only one who can save this city is a creature of the night.
Hey, stud. I thought we had something together.
We do.
While she craves a romance she can sink her claws into,
You're catnip to a girl like me.
he plots a foul reign of destruction.
My dear penguins, thanks to Batman, the time has come to punish all of Gotham!
You missed. Above Gotham looms its greatest hero.